Hello. Hi students. Welcome to part 3 of your Silk Road on Wheel by Nick Middleton. Now, what did we see in the last lecture? That after meeting the doctor and taking the medicine, all the doses, the writer was very comfortable. He had a sound sleep, and such a sound sleep that he is comparing him with the log, that he slept calm and quietly like a log, but he was not dead. Now we are on page 80. Let's see. Once he saw that I was going to leave. Who is he here? Satan. Okay, Satan left me to return to Lhasa. Now, as the driver Satan found that the writer is comfortable and he had a sound sleep and everything is okay, what did he do? He went away to Lhasa. As a Buddhist, he told me, he knew that it didn't really matter if he passed away, but he thought it would be bad for his business. This writer, the driver was a Buddhist, and what did he say? That if had the writer passed away also, or had he been dead, that it wouldn't have been of much importance, or that won't be of any really didn't matter if the writer passed away for the driver, but of course if he passed away then it would affect his business. That's why he felt that he would live. Darken didn't look so horrible after a good night's sleep. The place, after having a good sleep, he did not feel that the place is odd or not comfortable. He feel suffocated and so on. It was still dusty, partially derelict, and punctuated by heaps of rubble and reuse. But the sun shone brilliantly in a clear blue sky, and the outlook across the plain to the south gave me a vision of Himalayas commanded by a huge snow-capped mountain, Gurla Mandhata, with just a width of cloud suspended over its summit. So, Darken was not that horrible what he thought after sound sleep he had, but then still dust was there everywhere, here and there. The materials and dirt and things were there. There were heaps of rocks and rubbles which were scattered here and there, and in the midst of this the sun was shining brilliantly, and that's why the clear blue sky could be visible. And at the same time he looked over to the plain which was on the southern end, and that gave him a vision, means from there he could see the Himalayas which seemed commanding, okay, the huge range, and the snow capped everywhere. The mountain was covered with snow. Gurla Mandhata was just a width, which means huge. Okay, and the snow-capped mountain is Gurla Mandhata, and a huge cloud. This means huge cloud seemed to be suspending, means coming down from this summit, that is the peak of the Himalayas. The town had a couple of rudimentary general stores selling Chinese cigarettes, soap and other basic provisions, as well as the usual strings of prayer flags. So, this darkened the town where he went. Okay, rudimentary means basic. There were few general shops over there, and there he could see basic things which were sold over there, like Chinese cigarettes, soaps and many other basic provisions. At the same time, the strings for prayer flags are also there. In front of one, men gathered in the afternoon for a game of pool. The battered table looking supremely incongruous in the open air, while nearby women washed their long hair in the icy water of a narrow brook that babbled down past my guest house. Okay, so wherever in Darkin, in the guest house, wherever he was, what did he see? In front of one, where he was moving, he saw men were gathered. He is describing the busy schedule about the people over there. So what did he see? That men were busy playing the game of pool, and the battered table looking supremely incongruous. Incongruous means A table was there in the open air outside. A table was there. It was very badly incongruous, very badly arranged, and there men were playing the game of pool. And nearby, in this icy water, there was a lake. Brook means small stream. Okay, and there these women who were there in this darkin, they were washing their hair in the icy water that babbled down past my guest house. Babbled down means that was moving down, and they were talking something. Babble means they were talking in some language which the writer was not able to understand. Okay, and guest house, underneath the guest house. Darken felt relaxed and unhurried, but for me it came with a significant drawback. There were no pilgrims. Okay, Darken was relaxed place he could find, so he was not in a and unhurried. He was the place people were not bothered about anything. Okay, but for the writer, he was really in a hurry. Okay, and he was the thing is saying that significant one drawback was there. What was there? Even though the place was comfortable and he was comfortable there, but still no pilgrims were there, and he was in a hurry because he had to do the Kora. I had been told that at the height of the pilgrimage season, the town was bustling with visitors. He had come to know that in peak season, the place, the Mansarovar or Mount Kailash, on the way, lots of pilgrims are there, and in pilgrimage season, it is overflowing with visitors and so on. Bustling means overflowing. Many brought their own accommodation, enlarging the settlement around its edges as they set up their tents, which spilled down onto the plain. He say that these visitors, they were so that they could not have place in the hotels or the guest houses and so on. So many of these visitors would make their own arrangements, and they would set down tents and so on, and then stay there on the plain area. Spilled means everywhere they could see the tents. I had timed my arrival for the beginning of the season, but it seemed I was too early. Saying and hearing all these things, the writer had set his journey in the beginning of the season only, but then looking that no visitors are there, no pilgrims are there, he felt that might be he must have come early. One afternoon, I sat pondering my options over a glass of tea in Darken's only cafe. There was one cafe, and there he was having his glass of tea, and he was going through, pondering means thinking one or the other options. After a while, little consideration, I concluded they were severely limited, and whatever options he thought in his mind, okay, he felt that those options were very limited. Clearly, I hadn't made much progress with my self-help program on positive thinking. Okay, and so he's saying that he started to think that because all negative thoughts were coming, so he said that he would leave all these things aside. He would have he would think positively, but these all things he was not able to. These things of positive thinking and all assurances and things was not making him comfortable, and he was a bit tensed, and he was not progressing with things. In my defense, it hadn't been easy with all my sleeping difficulties. But however, I looked at it. So he's saying he tried to defend himself, and it hadn't, because of all these things, his sleeping difficulties and things were also there. But still he looked at it, and I could only wait. No other alternative, but he had to wait for some pilgrims to come. The pilgrimage trail was well trodden. Trail means route. Well trodden, the route which the pilgrims used to take to do the Kora or move on to Mount Kailash, that was really very well trodden, clear and clean. But I didn't fancy doing it alone. It was clear, but fancy means he did not think of or imagine that he could go alone on that trip. The Kora was seasonal because parts of the route were liable to blockage by snow. This Kora was seasonal. Anytime you cannot do the Kora or the Parikrama, because when snow is there, then the path would be blocked with snow. Then it would be difficult to do the Kora. So I had no idea whether or not the snow had cleared, but I wasn't encouraged by the chunks of dirty ice that still clung to the banks of Duncan's brook. They say that he was not sure whether there would be snow or not, whether the snow would be cleared or not. But at the same time, the brook is a small stream. In Duncan's brook, Duncan, the small stream, we are told, the icy stream was there, and he could see the dirty ice, which was chunks, means pieces of dirty ice, which was seen hanging on the banks and so on, and so he was not encouraged by those things. Since Seton had left, I hadn't come across anyone in Duncan with enough English to answer even this basic question. So what was his question? That if had he found someone and who would know English, he would ask whether the road is clear or not, whether there is ice, whether it is blocked or not. And these all questions, Seton used to know English, so he could have asked him. But as he has gone away, he was not with anyone in that place could he find who knew English and to whom he could ask the questions. Until that I met Norbu. The cafe was small, dark and cavernous with a long metal stove that ran down the middle. Okay, and then over there he met Nobu. He was sitting in a cafe. It was very small, everywhere dark, dirty, and in between a metal stove was there. The walls and the ceiling were wreathed with sheets of multicolored plastic of the stripped variety. And the wall or ceiling, what was there? Wreathed means it was covered with sheets which were of various colored plastics and of stripped variety. That was the variety. Broad, and what were the color of those plastic sheets? Blue, red and white. These were the color of the sheets through which the ceiling or the wall was covered. That is made into stout, voluminous shopping bags sold all over China. And this material is used, okay, to make huge shopping bags all over China. In many other countries of Asia as well as Europe. In many other European or Asian countries also, this sort of bags are available. As such, plastic must rate as one of China's most successful exports along the Silk Road today. Now, the route which the writer has taken to move on to Mount Kailash or do the Kora, that was the shortest route, and that was known as the Silk Road. Why was it known as the Silk Route or Silk Road? Because in China, China is famous for silk and at the same time plastic. So these things were exported, okay, through this route. Traders used to move to sell their silk and so on. So that's why the road was named as Silk Road. The cafe had a single window beside which I had taken up position so that I could see the pages of my notebook. I had also bought a novel with me to help pass the time. The writer was sitting in the cafe and he occupied a place near to the window so that he would not get bored. He could see the outside view also, and in between he could turn the pages of his notebook. At the same time, to escape from his loneliness, he had got a novel also which would help him to pass the time. Norbu saw my book when he came in and asked with a gesture if he could sit opposite me at my rickety table. So, as the writer was sitting in the cafe, this Norbu, he came inside and sat to the table or the seat just opposite to the writer, and he is asking, with him making a gesture, whether he could sit there or not. Rickety means teen, old. Table was kept there. And there the Norbu, this person asked the writer, can he sit there or not? You English? He inquired after he had ordered tea. Norbu came, ordered tea, and then he is asking the writer whether he is an Englishman, whether he knew English or not. I told him I was, and we struck up a conversation. Okay? And the writer agreed that yeah, he knew English, so both started up with a conversation. I didn't think he was from those parts because he was wearing a wind-cheater, metal-rimmed spectacles of Western style. The writer felt that Norbu was not from that place because the way he was dressed up was not as normal Tibetan do. What was he putting on? A wind-cheater and the metal-rimmed glasses of the Western style. He was a Tibetan, he told me. but worked in Beijing at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. So Norbu said that yeah, writer felt he was not a Tibetan, but Norbu said he was a Tibetan and he worked where? In Beijing, and he was in the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, in the Institute of Ethnic Literature. Which department? In the Institute of Ethnic Literature. I assume he was on some sort of field work, and seeing him, writer felt that maybe on some field work he must have come there. Yes and no, he said. I have come to do the Kora, my heart jumped. And he said, and on inquiring, what did the writer come to know? That this man, Norbu, had come to do the Kora, that is the Parikrama. And as he came to know, the writer was excited. Heart jumped means he felt excited. Why? Because he was alone and he couldn't start the Kora because he was all alone. So he was happy that at least someone else is there with him. Norbu had been writing academic papers about the Kailash Kora and its importance in various works of Buddhist literature for many years. What was this project? He been writing about this Mansarovar or Kailash Kora in various Buddhist literature since many years. And he told him also, the writer, that he had never actually done it himself. Norbu said that he been writing about this Kora in his literature but had never done it himself. When the time came for me to tell him what brought me to darken, his eyes lit up. Now, the writer told him that why he had come to darken and so on. This person, this man, Norbu, he became, his eyes lit up means he became happy. We could be a team, he said excited. He was very happy. So he said, good, you have also come here to do the Kora. We will have a good time, a good team we will have. Two academics who have escaped from the library. Perhaps my positive thinking strategy was working after all. So these two academics, the writer, okay, and Norbu, both were academic, have come from academic field, but now they are pilgrims. They have come to do the Kora, so they will be having the great time. And now the writer is happy that his positive thinking, what maybe someone he would get and he would be able to do the Kora. He felt that was working. My initial relief at meeting Norbu, who was also staying in the guest house, was tempered by the realization that he was almost as ill-equipped as I was for the pilgrimage. And what was that? He thought that Norbu would be experienced and he would be knowing what the Kora is and so on. But as he met, the first relief, what is that? As the writer was without any equipment or he was unaware of this field, that is the Kora, doing the Kora and so on, he felt that Norbu also did not have any equipments and things, even though he had come to do the Kora. He kept telling me how fat he was and how hard it was going to be. Very high up, he kept reminding me, so tiresome to walk. He wasn't really a practicing Buddhist. It transpired, but he had enthusiasm and he was, of course, Tibetan. So, what did this Norbu say? That he kept on telling how he was fat, and then because of his obesity, he found it difficult to walk. He went up, and then he kept reminding me that it was really a tiresome walk and so on. And then he said that he was not moving on or doing as a Buddhist, practicing Buddhist means he did not have the experience that these Buddhist travelers, how they move on and so on. But he had that enthusiasm that he was of course a Tibetan and still he is moving. Although I had originally envisaged thought making the trek in the company of devout believers. Devout means strong. He said, even though they were not experienced, Norbu and the writer, but they were strong believers of these things. On reflection, I decided that perhaps Norbu would turn out to be the ideal companion. So, he is saying as he had decided, he would definitely go and no other alternative, but he said that Norbu would be an ideal companion for him to do the Kora. He suggested we hire some yaks to carry our luggage. As Norbu suggested him, they got yaks. Yaks are wild asses which are seen in the hilly areas. Okay? and why did they to borrow it or hire it? To that they can carry their luggage, which I interpreted as a good sign. Means a good sign is that of course the weight of the luggage won't disturb them, and no, he was good sign is he was relaxed that something Norbu knew, and he had no intention of prostrating himself all around the mountain. So writer was happy. Prostrating means that he carrying the luggage and then doing the kora and all. He was happy that this man Norbu was not interested in stretching himself or taking all the trouble carrying the luggage as well as doing the kora. So when he hired a yak, he said, yeah, they could comfortably do the journey. Not possible, he cried, collapsing across the table in hysterical laughter. So writer felt that as the luggage is to be carried out by the yak, then might be the journey would be comfortable. But then Norbu said that collapsing, he felt hysterically in a taunting manner or out of fun. He started laughing and he said that it is not possible so. It wasn't his style, and anyway his tummy was too big. That was not his style to talk like that, but he had a big tummy. We are told that he was had a heavy body, and how he experienced or how difficulty he had in climbing the Mount Kailash or doing the kora, and that is how but then whatever it be, they were good companion. Writer was happy to have him as a companion, which means better something than nothing. So he did not have any companion, and he was worried whether he would be able to do the kora or not. But at least whatever be Norbu's physical condition, they can do the kora, and he thought he might be a good companion. So they move on to do the kora. And here the Silk Road, the title what the writer has given of this literary piece, really successful, I feel. And even though we have not done the kora or parikrama of Mount Kailash, but the writer with his vivid and beautiful description, he had made so many of us enthusiastic that one or the other day, if we get an option, we would of course intend or wish to do the kora. I hope you too. Even I've been inspired by this literary piece to do the kora. May or may not, I'll be getting the chance or not. But of course, a thought is there that I would get a chance to do the kora. Thank you for watching the video. Here I complete the lesson. Thank you.